Welcome to Rewind-A-Dynamite. It is John Pollock here alongside Wai Ting. Moments after Dynamite concluded at the Blue Cross Arena in Rochester, New York. How are you tonight, Wai?
Doing okay, John. How are you?
It's
Uh-oh. That's not good.
if it's not one thing, it's another. That's I don't know. My both of my children are sick, and it's just been one of these weeks where it's very unfortunate timing. It's my son's birthday next week, and it's just a total bunch of chaos in the moment. So that is my current state right now. So I would be disingenuous if I said things are going great. They're not.
That's totally understandable. So we'll get through this review, and then you can go off and
Yes.
fulfill some of your other duties.
Well, we are going to get into tonight's episode, which again took place from Rochester. And for those in New York, they did announce that Dynamite and Rampage will be returning to the state of New York with a show in Buffalo on Wednesday, September the 7th at the KeyBank Center. So that is the major arena in Buffalo, and this would represent surpassing Detroit as the closest in proximity for Canadians to cross the border. I mean, this is a sub 2-hour trek way.
I know, yeah. I mean, it doesn't look like we're getting all out, but we got a Dynamite a few days after. So
yeah, this will be the show coming out of the pay-per-view, out of All Out. Yes.
Yep. So yeah, I'm sure the Canadian contingent will be out in full force at Buffalo.
Yes. I think WH will be taking a nap that night, probably. Maybe he'll want to go.
I think he's spoken about wanting to go to an AEW show. So
well, maybe we will all go down for September the 7th. But that was announced ahead of time, and tickets for that are going on sale in a couple of weeks on the 22nd. Tonight, it looks like this is going to be the pattern going forward. We had Excalibur, Taz, and Tony Schiavone for the first hour and bringing Jim Ross out for the second hour. I will tell you, like, when you do, like, Jim Ross's theme never fails that it gets a great response from the audience, like, midway through the show.
Yeah. I mean, it gets a great response at the beginning of the show, too, when it's not on TV. So at any point they play the theme, makes them come out feeling like a bigger deal. I think as well, it allows a chance for Taz to shine. And by far, this is the better team of having Excalibur and Taz. Who's the third person that they have?
Schiavone.
In the first hour?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, there you go. So, I mean, more importantly, I think it gives Taz a chance to shine on the main show, and he's really been fantastic. So I think it's a setup that is working out so far.
Do you think it's a positive to have Jim Ross on Rampage on Fridays?
Is it a positive? I mean, I don't think it really hurts. I think it probably helps. It probably helps having a bit of that star power. Not to say like people are tuning into Rampage just to hear Jim Ross, but maybe if you're getting a casual fan flipping around, recognizing Jim Ross's voice, maybe that's a benefit. I don't know if it makes that big of a difference either way.
Yeah. Obviously, Rampage is just starting as we're speaking. I assume they're doing what they did last week because Jericho he's off in the UK this week. So he was not actually on Dynamite tonight. So it's not a case where he would have been around to even do Rampage this week. I guess we will see when he returns if he still has a seat on Rampage, if they have Jim Ross there, and Jericho is going to be there as well, what the makeup will be, especially for Rampage, after we've seen a few weeks of this new commentary strategy that they have had. But starting the night off we go to the back, and there's Wardlow making his big entrance, and he is challenging Scorpio Sky in a street fight for the TNT Championship. I guess at some point here, Excalibur did reference MJF, and yet all these people buzzing. What could that mean? He said MJF. Well, it meant nothing. So Wardlow did his big entrance, and Scorpio Sky comes out flanked by, I guess, I would question if they were card-carrying members of American Top Team, though I did recognize Kevin Matthews there, KM in Impact. The rest could not pick out of a lineup, but I don't know if they were full-fledged ATT members.
I'm going to assume they didn't fly any actual ATT members up from Florida.
I don't think so.
Maybe just found somebody in the local area or people who are willing to make the drive from the independent wrestling scene to take some of those bumps. But sure, whatever. They got the tank tops, like looked official enough.
What we needed were stationary targets for Wardlow to lift and send into orbit. That's what these people were filling a role of. Yeah. And they did bring up right at the beginning, this being Brody Lee's hometown and his connection to the TNT Championship. And Dan Lambert slaps Wardlow on the back, and then the ATT guys all stand in the way, and this allows Sky to send Wardlow into the steps, getting the heat as they go over the break. Sky then gets sent to the mat, and Wardlow hits a swanton. And from this moment on, I mean, this crowd was just all behind Wardlow. The last 6 weeks were just... Let's go back to how hot this guy was going into the Double or Nothing show. Red hot crowd for Wardlow down the stretch here, and he just destroys everybody. He goes for the power bomb. The ATT guys run in, and he wrecks shop on these individuals. Military presses one dude to the rest on the floor, turns around, and Sky nails him with a belt shot for a 2 count. Then Wardlow stops a TKO, runs Sky into Dan Lambert on the apron. The straps come down. 1 power bomb, 2 power bombs, 3 power bombs, and he just stands on top of Scorpio Sky for the clean win, and Wardlow is your new TNT champion, and this crowd went nuts for this.
Oh, they did, yeah. I mean, they saw a title change. I mean, for Wardlow, I think it's in his story arc, it's the culmination of a several months journey. It was a much more straightforward match than I expected, despite all these shenanigans here with the street fight. But I was wondering this afternoon whether or not they would be continuing this feud, because I think Scorpio Sky is a TNT champion. To me, he hasn't necessarily achieved a whole lot. He's had that feud with Sammy Guevara, which I think has been at this point universally panned, and hasn't really had any significant, I would say, defenses or feuds beyond that.
And has been hurt too. So who knows how much that has interrupted things.
And so for that reason, I wondered if they would keep the belt on him a little bit longer, have Wardlow chase a little bit before actually getting the victory. But instead, this was about as straightforward of a Wardlow win as we would expect, along with, of course, some putty patrol spots that always work incredibly well for him, and I thought were very well done here. But then just Powerbomb Symphony 1 2 3 clean win, and maybe this is for the better, because Wardlow ultimately is your big project, and to keep him strong even with the championship win here maybe is the more important goal. So it completely connected with this crowd, and they cheered him as if he was as hot as the MJF feud.
Yeah, I like Scorpio Sky a lot, and I think he didn't fully benefit from this whole TNT Championship, and I think there were several factors that you listed that affected it. But Wardlow felt like the big star. And I would say, I'm not going to say this was the best match on Dynamite, but I did think this was the most effective thing on the show, because Wardlow, you can argue that he was certainly just kind of in this holding pattern the last few weeks. And tonight just felt like snap their fingers and we have this big monster. He wins. The crowd went nuts for it. I don't think you could have asked for a better outcome here in terms of how he was received from this audience, and moving ahead now, feels like a player in this company.
They gave you big confetti celebration. The visual at the end was really wonderful. And now you have a bit of an excuse to bring back the TNT Open Challenge, with him being a TNT champion as a babyface. And he can essentially continue these squash matches for a long, long time until he gets hot enough for the crowd to demand him. And until maybe the company feels that he's ready for something beyond the TNT Championship, which of course would be the World Championship at that point. But it kind of adds a bit of a longer lease on this Wardlow formula of match that we've developed up until this point.
Yes, I'm not going to fall into the trap we have for the Intercontinental title whenever someone new wins it, and we say, oh, they should have a real long reign to now really reestablish this title. The TNT title, let's see how much time he gets with this thing.
Yeah, like I mean, a lot of quick runs we've had this year, haven't we?
Oh, dude, I could never go through the title lineage of the TNT title from this year
Mm.
alone. It's just been all over the place.
Mm.
Jon Moxley cut a really nice promo in the back saying that a lot of people have tried to make their name off him and lost money betting against him. People think that Brody King is going to surprise me. Well, he brings up that he knows what type of monster Brody King is. He beat Tanahashi last week, a man he respects. Days later, he's carving people's faces in at Blood and Guts. I'm glad he specified that this was in a wrestling match, not just randomly carving out people's faces. And he knows Brody King from New Japan, ROH. I've got all the streaming services. And he knows his friends. I know your enemies. Well, how big is your heart? You're going to be swimming in deep waters with the biggest shark in the game. And at Blackpool Combat Club, we find your limits and we push them. Step up or get stepped on.
I'm sure he's an Honor Club member.
Yeah, he's. I'm sure he was one of the last ones to, let go of Honor Club. You never know.
Probably signed up to everything, IWTV, anything that's out there. I'm sure he's got an account. Strong promo from Mox. He really is, I think, an ideal lead for this promotion. Sounding like a champion every time he talks.
Yeah. Brody King needed something on this show. And this is,
time.
You always bring up this point. It's a very strong one. Like that is something in NXT that they dedicate that time to. And we'll get into a segment later where it was a very truncated version of a terrific promo that you would have no idea of just based on the recap. And for this show, like ideally you would have wanted, like Brody King is a relatively cold challenger and you're building this whole show towards this guy going for the title. At the very least, you could argue he needed this promo time more than Jon Moxley did because I don't think you're selling people on the idea of a title change and give us something that at least puts some kind of doubt in. Like you don't, as a viewer, know that much about Brody King. He has not presented with any kind of depth on this show beyond he's the sidekick of Malachi Black.
I completely agree. If it wasn't for this Mox promo, if you're strictly watching television, you would have no idea that Brody King spent any amount of time in Ring of Honor or New Japan Pro Wrestling. And even if you did pay attention to Mox, you would have no idea what his accomplishments were in either of those promotions. It's not like they don't have this library under their ownership. They have all the footage that you possibly need to tell a Brody King story, to even, between New Japan Strong and Ring of Honor, I'm sure they would have access to. So I just think that they give a little too much credit for their audience to know who somebody like Brody King is when, I would say for people who haven't spent time in WWE, I think that's a big question. If you're Claudio Castagnoli, yeah, I think most people watching would know who you were. But if you're anybody who hasn't really spent a significant time in a national spotlight, they're essentially, no names. And if you have the resources to tell a bigger story, to introduce them, I don't know why you wouldn't use them.
And we know that it's like, listen, these AEW shows, they are very much structured around bell-to-bell content, but there is plenty of, like, we had 2 separate segments with Mark Sterling and Tony Nese with this petition tonight. Mm-hmm. Are you telling me like building this nothing Rampage match was of the most significance on this show? So, I mean, they do find time for talking segments and even with lower level stars. And this was your main event. And I did think it needed like that extra push because of where the challenger is slotted. And that takes us to Mark Sterling and Tony Nese. They approach Keith Lee and they are trying to get Swerve removed from the roster. And they have a petition. And Lee explains they do have trust issues, but he's still my partner and we're still winning, unlike you. So is this how contracts can be eradicated? If you get enough signatures, it can void someone's contract? I don't know how that works, but he's the lawyer.
I suppose it's a start. How effective are petitions? Period. I mean they're abundant, but like I suppose it's just a way to prove to whoever is actually in power that change people want to see change. I don't think the petition in and of itself is any sort of legally binding document.
Is this not the storyline key to open the door to MJF's exit from this company? He's the most hated guy in the company. All he needs is someone to get a petition and he's free. He can go to WWE then.
Well, it'd have to be quite the petition. I mean, who knows what the makeup of his contract is.
Christian Cage and his turtleneck are joined by Luchasaurus, and they come out, and Christian explains that on the heels of Blood and Guts, I'm the Cage everyone is talking about. And he goes on to explain why Luchasaurus aligned with him, but before he can explain, Matt Hardy comes out. And he calls Christian the Michael Jordan of being an asshole.
People throw the term the Michael Jordan of blank like really loosely these days.
I've never heard this one though. You
You
are the Michael Jordan of being an asshole.
Some people would argue Michael Jordan is the Michael Jordan of being an asshole.
I was offended. Matt says that Jungle Boy was his friend and he did not deserve that. Yes, Matt Hardy and Jungle Boy, they go way back. Cage says that they don't know Jungle Boy the way that he does. And Matt is starting to make his brother sound like the sober one. And dude, the reaction was first, this crowd was literally stunned that they went there. And then it turned into loud chants of asshole. I gave more of a pass on the Luke Perry one. This one to me, I did not like the idea of taking this very real story and turning a drinking and driving story into just a cheap pop here. But this is also like, this is the Christian character now that he's going for, of every week having a line that generates this reaction.
Yeah. In professional wrestling, it is a very bizarre and I think wonderful art form where it often encourages, taking the most taboo, real life, uncomfortable topics and turning them into entertainment. And every viewer is going to have their own line of what they deem comfortable when it comes to something like this. I think in Jeff Hardy's case, though, we've seen enough instances of this
over and over again that they have done this.
Across, we saw it plenty in WWE and in AEW. It's a relatively new phenomenon. I would say maybe this feels like one of the first times that they've kind of dove into, at least, with Jeff Hardy. Maybe being as close to like the business and his career as you and I are, it probably feels a lot more uncomfortable than like, but I was scoping up Reddit and everybody, like, at least, for people that were upvoting comments, seemed to really enjoy this Christian thing. So it's going to be different. If you happen to enjoy it, I'm not going to fault you for it, but if it made you uncomfortable, well, I don't blame you either. And maybe that was by design.
It was by design. Like, that is the emotion they want to evoke out of you. But at the same time, you have to look that you are benefiting off of this drinking and driving story to benefit a character, to benefit your storyline, and use it for entertainment. And I think like that, if you're going to go that direction, that comes with a stigma that you are putting on yourself, that is how you're building this.
And the issue here is not whether or not Jeff Hardy would have signed off on this, would have been given warning. We don't know, of course, but with his brother involved, I would certainly.
Well, Marco Stunt sure didn't know that comment was coming a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah,
you would assume here.
But they also weren't talking about, like, his Marco Stunt's sobriety or any sort of, like, terrible additional thing. Anyway, but that's not even the point. The point is using this for story okay, and how will this make the company look should, God forbid, Jeff Hardy go through something like this again in the future? He's currently in rehab as far as I know. And is this just the best look for a company that's just, still trying to really, like,
how does that go if you wanted to run this line by Jeff? Who's contacting him and how are you going through? You're contacting the rehab facility. Can you put Jeff on the line? We want to run something by him.
I'm not sure what sort of contact there is, but I would assume it would start with Matt anyway. Like, at this point it's speculation, but I'm not sure.
Matt says that Cage is trying to use Luchasaurus to make money, and Matt admits he's guilty of that too. I took Private Party and Butcher and the Blade and I used them. I hate myself for it and I regret that time. And the last month of my life has been upside down. Perhaps it's karma, and I won't let Luchasaurus be taken advantage of. And Cage calls him a clout chaser. You use your kids, your wife, your brother-in-law, a dilapidated boat, and you even turn a blind eye to your brother's issues to ride his coattails one last time. And Cage is the hottest and most influential star in AEW. Matt's just trying to attach himself. You're more embarrassing to your family than Jeff. And Cage and Hardy go to fight when Luchasaurus jumps in, attacking Matt, boots his head into the post, and then choke slams him through a table on the floor. And Cage goes up to him and says, "There's your clout for the day, Matthew." So what do you think of the segment overall?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly made you uncomfortable and got a reaction. Maybe my personal feelings about the content aside, I think the delivery that Christian has been giving and his just overall aura as this like asshole, the Michael Jordan of assholes, I think he's been very good. But
he's very good as in this version, absolutely.
Yeah, but I mean, again, is it so uncomfortable that it's taking you out of the immersion of this entertainment program? I think that's a question for every person watching it, for their own, limits.
Yeah, I think the fact that this guy's literally in rehab and it's just background, but again, there are going to be people that love that you are using real life issues, and it's going to have that much more of it's going to hit that much harder when you're relying on that stuff. People are going to have different reactions to it. I will tell you, and maybe this is just going to be Matt being fed to Luchasaurus. That's probably where we're going, because it almost seems like the Christian character is this guy who does not work. He just is going to be avoiding. He's using everyone else to fight his battles, and this guy is probably going to go. And the next match he will have is the big one with Jungle Boy, and it's going to be I don't see a Matt Hardy Christian Cage match coming out of this, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, we wonder exactly, because I think to have Christian Cage be the end game in the feud might be a bit of a disservice to ultimately who I think are the projects here in your younger guys in Luchasaurus and Jungle Boy. I feel like they should do what they can to, make Luchasaurus feel like he's the ultimate opponent for Jungle Boy. And, Christian more so in the Bobby Heenan role where he might, get his comeuppance in an attack.
I think the big match though has to be Jungle Boy beating Christian. Like at the end of it, I think that is the big win for Jungle Boy.
Perhaps, yeah. I'm also curious, what the continued tease of this reason why he's got Luchasaurus wrapped around his finger is. He was about to reveal it today, and Marco Stunt. So in an interview, Marco Stunt said something to the effect of he has his own presumptions of where the story is going, and I think he's thinking that Christian replaced him, and that's why he brought Marco Stunt up. When to me it feels like because they're hinting at some sort of blackmail story going on, so it seems more to me like it might have been something that Luchasaurus did that caused Marco Stunt's exit. Anyway, there's a bit of a mystery that is yet to reveal.
Maybe Luchasaurus was the last signature on the petition.
Petitions is how people just lose their jobs, hey?
Mm-hmm. Then we had the Blood and Guts recap, and this featured comments from the Road to special, including we had Ortiz in here, Regal, and if you missed it, very quick from Matt Menard. And I watched this, and you would have no idea. And this was kind of like the talk of everything on Tuesday night was this impassioned promo from Matt Menard. Also a very good one from Angelo Parker. But to me, Matt Menard, this was the most significant thing I've seen out of this guy in his career. To me, I'm not saying it will necessarily be this way because this was really just glossed over on the show and not played up as a big deal. But if it was, I could imagine a year from now, this promo being much more of a lasting image from this match than Sammy Guevara being tossed off the top of the cage. That's how great this promo was for Matt Menard, who was a comedy goofball, an entertaining comedy goofball, but a goofball nonetheless, and did this promo. And this to me was very much the same reaction like Eddie Kingston got when he debuted and did that incredible passionate speech when he was approaching Cody. And I just thought this promo was terrific from Matt Menard.
He's talking about missing his kid's first steps.
Yes.
Because he couldn't be there because of this.
And you really have to watch this. It's about 3 minutes. I could not do it justice.
It's incredible. But very graphic because there's a lot of dry blood on people's faces, okay, and across all of these promos. So maybe watch it, turn your screen to black and white if you're squeamish. I totally agree with you. But I don't see it getting more play than, for instance, the Sammy Guevara, than anything that we saw on TV. By the sheer fact that we didn't really see this on TV, John.
No,
And
I 100% would have played this, and I think they avoid putting stuff like this on TV, and it was just boom, you had like 2 lines out of Matt Menard. You would have nothing would have struck you from this package of this being anything out of the ordinary, because it was quick. It was like mixing in the other ones. But man, this was an incredible promo, and one that to me would have been like, you would have had such a different view of Matt Menard after this. And instead it was totally lost in the show. This would not have stood out to you in any way.
They have their reasons, like they're the guys with the numbers who have the minute by minute ratings to determine whether or not it's worthwhile to do this stuff versus putting it on Road to. I'll say, I think for me, just as a viewer, at some point, I feel like some things are worth sacrificing for better story, or at least just for a better viewing experience. And in the case of like a Matt Menard, maybe for the long-term build of a potential guy that you can rely on to become a bigger star than just a comedy figure. So yeah, I mean, there are things about Dynamite I really would wish that they would, just do more of, and that's promos and things like this.
In this day and age, like what Christian said in that promo a few weeks ago, like, yes, it was in character, but it rang true of the idea that we see all these incredible matches, and yet, he refers to like the TLC matches people are still talking about all these years later. How many incredible matches could I list off that have happened in the last 30 days, even in the last 7 days, that just come and go? To me, promos are one thing where when there's a great promo, that's a way that you can stand out a bit differently. And I would argue like this promo was way more important than anything Matt Menard did in that match last week. And it really drove home the blood and guts match. Like I would have argued about starting the show with this video package and this extended promo of just, here is the aftermath of this war that you watched go off the air last week, and here are the survivors of this war, and this incredible speech from Matt Menard. But I would say if you are tailoring your show by just the idea of any non-wrestling that could lose a viewer minute by minute, I just think it's a really difficult way to miss out on stuff that falls into your lap like this and get it to the largest audience possible. But I recommend you watch the promo if you have not already. Shivani is with Claudio and Jake Hager, who was decked out in jeans, a fanny pack, and ditched the shirt. He looked ridiculous here. And they have signed a waiver, for no physicality backstage. I maintain this should just be a rule, okay? Just a flat rule. Any fighting that happens backstage, no petitions, you're gone.
No petitions. Okay.
I don't need an explanation
no waivers.
Every time. They have agreed to no physicality. They have been in negotiations all day. Hager says that he knows he isn't as tough or as hard as him, and you've never been a world champion like me. And dude, I'm going through my head. I'm like, this guy, I was like, oh yeah, he was a world champion technically.
Money in the Bank winner.
Very memorable run.
Who did he beat?
He beat Jericho. That's right. Mm-hmm. Says that Claudio wasn't a champion in WWE or ROH. Claudio brings up, I beat Zack Sabre Jr. in my first match, and then we beat the Jericho Appreciation Society, and you carry Jericho's bags. Be undefeated in MMA, but I'm 2-0 in AEW, and we will meet next week. 2 undefeated stars will meet. Someone's always got to go next week on Fyter Fest, night 1.
Hager is undefeated in MMA.
I think he's got a no contest in there, but he has not been beaten in MMA.
So that's on the line?
Yes, his MMA record is at stake here. In this. All
right.
Yeah,
okay. Why not? We'll see.
2-0 versus 3-0 and 1 no contest.
Okay, interesting. Yeah.
So alert Tapology and Sherdog after Dynamite next week. They might have to update their records.
Yeah, it's a nice little match for next week. It's a reunion of the, what do they call them?
The
Real Americans.
Real Americans?
The Real Americans. That is correct, yeah.
Oh, we're going to get all those We the People chants next week, aren't we?
At least for a bit, yeah. Sure.
Okay. The Butcher and the Blade, accompanied by the Bunny, took on Swerve Strickland and Keith Lee. early on, Swerve and Blade messed up this leapfrog spot. Just looked not fun for Blade as Swerve just came crashing down on him. And then Swerve did a drop down, tripping Blade. And then the bunny blocks a kick off the apron as Swerve is going for it. And he gets swept by Blade and dumped on his head onto the apron and lands on the floor. Excalibur says, I've just heard in my ear, we have a new match tonight. The Gun Club and the Acclaimed will be in an 8-man tag. So they just carved out some time here for this 8-man tag later. Lee comes in. We see Lee set up for a pounce, but Blade pulls Swerve in front, so it's Swerve who takes the pounce from Lee, and they get the advantage on Keith Lee. Butcher launches Swerve into a knee strike, and then a big lariat for a near fall as Keith Lee leaps to make the save, and for like the last, I would say 2 minutes or so, this just stops being a tag match. The referee has just realized these four are staying in here permanently. Let's just burn the tag ropes. So we just have a tornado match here. Lee lifts Blade into the double foot stomp and then into the sit out powerbomb from Lee, and Swerve pins Blade. So they win again.
They win again, but with a little bit of miscommunication in there to continue a bit of that tease. Yeah. I thought it was an all right match here. Butcher and the Blade, of course, being from nearby in Buffalo. Not necessarily getting any sort of hometown treatment here. This was a card that was still very much for Lee and Swerve. They're a team that I think has been like, this story of them, the two of them not getting along is just like, not really doing it for me. I have to say, like, I don't know if it's just because I've seen it so often in the WWE, or if it's the fact that maybe I'd rather see the two of them as single stars at this point and just want to get, like, they're not necessarily building any sort of like solid momentum towards like the tag team championships, even though like they're getting a match next week. I just don't see it happening. And then, I'm just kind of ready for them to go on their own separate ways.
Yeah, I don't think he dumped them out of the Battle Royal last month, and okay, it's like every man for himself, but it's like, I don't think anyone's really invested in like, why are you guys are winning all these matches. It just seems like I don't have like an emotional reason to want you to stay together nor break up. You know what I mean? It's like, we just feel like we're going through the motions of this. And they're having like really good matches as a team. So I don't think it's the partners not getting along is more of a turnoff than what they have been producing in the ring. That's been the most compelling stuff with these two.
I mean, there are just clearly other tag teams in this division that this crowd is connecting a lot more with, as we'll go on to discuss.
Powerhouse Hobbs and Ricky Starks storm out. Hobbs says, "We are two grown-ass men, you trick-ass bitch."
Yeah. You're one of your favorite insults.
Yes. I've been called that a few times by you off air. Starks then takes over and says, "We can end your careers online or on this microphone. You are several levels below us." And then, dude, this guy goes full like Ric Flair 1987, screaming. He's going to take his clothes off. Somehow he lost his shoes in all this and is screaming about who the greatest team is and going to make a challenge.
Totally felt like Ric Flair to me. Just, the same sort of chaotic messiness on live TV as well, where you don't exactly know what he just said. He just loses control because he's so pissed off. He also mentioned how, like, we could end your career. You better ask our former teammate. Something to the effect of some former teammate. Are they talking about Brian Cage? They would have to be, right?
Must be. Yeah. I
mean, Brian Cage's career is fine. He's a part of this Tully Blanchard Enterprises.
Yeah, with the what is it? The Hounds of Agony, or whatever the hell their name is.
I don't
know. The Ghouls of Agony, the Gates of Agony.
Gates of Agony.
The Gates of Agony.
Yeah.
Great name.
Not the Authors of Pain, the Gates of Agony.
Yes. Which, I mean, yeah, the Gates of Agony might have been the Motor Point Arena on Saturday.
Oh goodness, yeah.
That'll be Whale tackle that on the news on Thursday. Yeah. So yeah, I thought it was a great promo from Ricky Starks as well. And Hobbs is finding himself too, I think, personality wise on the microphone. Like they complement each other really well. I like these two together.
Absolutely. I mean, Starks is going to be the one receiving most of the microphone time, but they're letting Hobbs speak more and more. He sounded great today.
So as they're debating the greatest tag team, the Young Bucks come out and they explain they don't have to apologize for interrupting because they started this company. And this tag division is on fire. Everyone's eating well, but let's not forget who set the table. Nick praises Swerve and Keith Lee for their 4.5-star match at Double or Nothing, which is what we'd call an off night. And you still lost to Jurassic Express. And who beat Jurassic Express a few weeks later as they hold up their tag titles? Matt Jackson suggests they go Triple or Nothing and proposes a 3-way match for next week in Savannah, Georgia. The only thing was this crowd just started all chanting for FTR. And it just brought the house down like it brought my house down here.
So John, unfortunately without camera, but that's okay. I thought that was the thing that stood out to me the most about this particular segment, where it was one where featuring 2 heel tag teams in the Young Bucks as well as Hobbs and Starks, and then a babyface tag team that I think they're really trying to get over in Lee and Swerve, but everybody just would rather see FTR. And it was a bit of a rare instance of, I think, an AEW crowd hijacking the show by chanting for something that they're not necessarily the show is intending for them to cheer for. So everybody took notice, and I'm sure like it's immediate that I think this crowd really wants to see FTR injected into this world title picture. They're by far the hottest babyface tag team above, any of the other ones. I'm sure the match will be great next week, but I wouldn't be surprised if those chants dominated next week too.
Yeah, it was one of those instances where sometimes AEW, they're really on the ball, expecting certain reactions like this, and then they deliver it. And this was one where, listen, I'm not complaining. This 3-way is going to be tremendous, I think, on television next week. But it was one of those where, this crowd, like when they brought up like the greatest tag team, this crowd, they wanted to see FTR in the mix here. And long term, you have to imagine that the Bucks and FTR is a destination. I just don't think that's happening in Savannah next week. But it's not a bad thing that your audience is kind of is leading you in that direction. And that's with all the belts that FTR have. It would only make sense that eventually they go after the AEW tag titles.
Could honestly at this point be as soon as All Out, like with them being as hot as they are. I don't know if they're going to get any hotter. And that match against the Bucks, of course, is, probably the marquee match that they're looking forward to, but they can't do it next week yet, although this crowd will probably continue to cheer for it.
We had a House of Black promo. Malachi Black admires Moxley for the damage he has inflicted on himself. Their violence is by design, but not the Impact Wrestling Group. He doesn't know pain and violence, but King will leave his mark on Moxley and will go far beyond the physical realm of pain. And after Malachi Black cut the promo, Brody King walked into the shot, and that was the setup. This was not the promo material I was referring to earlier, but this was something.
It looked cool, but beyond looking cool, it doesn't really tell you a whole lot about Brody King's accomplishments beyond him essentially being a lackey for Malachi Black.
Eddie Kingston was out with Tony Schiavone. He congratulates Wardlow, congratulates his team on winning last week, even Claudio, he says, and then jokes about him maturing. When all of a sudden, first he says that Jericho made him a liar last week. I didn't taste your blood, so I'm going to make you bleed. And Jericho appears on the screen. This was pre-taped, and they reveal that Ruby Soho is being attacked. And there is the limo, and Ty Conti slams the door on her arm, leaving Ruby down on the floor. This was right out of WCW and Jim Crockett Promotions. And there you have Ruby down and out. We didn't get the reaction of Eddie Kingston. I think they should have put the camera back on him to react to this, but there you go.
Maybe you'll get a big promo online next week, just of him being really upset.
He'll cut like a 9-minute death sentence on Jericho, and we'll get 30 seconds next week. Quick package that'll include highlights of the angle. Yeah.
I enjoyed the angle here. It looked really good. Whatever they do to work these sort of car slamming things, definitely convinced me. I like the continued association of Eddie with Ruby Soho. I'm still not exactly sure why, but I'm just assuming that they, their reason for a lot of the teams on the show is Oh, they go way back in the indies, okay? In the indies, like as this like black hole of like story and depth that we're just, I suppose, are supposed to assume that
I'm fine
existed.
with that though.
I'm fine too.
Like
I'm
they've
fine
made
too.
the connection. She was out there last week, so I like people at
Hey,
least know that that this is someone he cares for.
if you can buy that Sheamus and Drew McIntyre are best friends that go way back, I could buy this. Yeah, it's not a problem. I like it. And the fact that it not only sets up Eddie versus Jericho, but also Soho versus Conti as well, I think gives her something relevant to do, gives Ty Conti something relevant to do. And we're finally going to get that singles match.
Drew Sheamus is legit. Like
I know.
Oh, okay. Dark Order comes out. Surprisingly here. Well, maybe not, given the show and where they were. And they're joined by Cody, and John Silver says that this is Dark Order country, and Evil Uno has a message and thanks them for supporting Dark Order. And he says they're almost like teasing, like we're gonna go our separate ways at this point. Like you've seen the group kind of dwindle with people leaving, Alan Angels being the most recent. But says the six of us are here to stay. Dark Order is forever, and we're beginning a new chapter. And -1 is going to deliver the proclamation when QT Marshall comes out calling -1 a charity case, and Evil Uno is holding him back. -1's ready to just destroy this dude. And QT says that Brody was a legend, but you're not your father. You take after your mother. And says that he wants to challenge -1 man to man. Send the Dark Order to the back. And this guy's challenging the child to a man-on-man violent affair, and then threatens to rip the heads off of his toys in the locker room. All of a sudden, Hangman Page comes out to a huge pop. Everyone takes turns destroying QT. And at the end, -1 says, I would pin you right now, but I'm going to wait until I'm 18.
I think he's at 19.
19? Okay.
Yeah.
19. So
which is how many years away?
A lot. This is the longest build that they have going in AEW.
Okay, yeah. I'm just kind of curious whether or not QT will even be wrestling by that point. Knowing AEW, and
he has to. He's got to stick around now for this match.
Listen, if this company is still around, guaranteed they will pay this off. Okay, at some point we will go back to this video, maybe a 30-second clip right before it actually happens, and then we will get our big payoff several years down in the future, if KT Marshall is still active and able, of course. I thought it was. I think we're all wondering whether or not, being in Rochester, the kind of unofficial home base of the Dark Order, the spiritual home base of the Dark Order, whether or not we would see any sort of presence at all, or whether we just kind of see this continued background, fading away of this faction one by one. So it was really nice that we got this little bit of presence here, addressing maybe a bit of the elephant in the room, the departure of several members. We also had a bit of confirmation here that Colt Cabana doesn't seem to be a part of this group anymore. They did, Evil Uno did say the six of us, of which Colt Cabana was not present. So we shall see, if he just continues to pop up in ROH separately or something else. But seems like this is the 6 members of the Dark Order, and the question is, though, will they have any sort of significant storylines, beyond just being kind of Hangman Page's Putty Patrol, and beyond maybe the yearly appearance here at Rochester to give a state of the Dark Order address.
Yeah, that's right. And it's a group that.
Were you trying to look up Brody Lee's?
I was actually at the end of 2020. He was 8 years old. So if you do the math, he's either like 9 or 10. So we're looking at like a 9 to 10 year build.
Less than a decade here, before we get payoff to this angle.
Yeah. I don't know how much presence you'll see from Dark Order, but this does feel like a restart that they have to do at least something in the short term with them.
I certainly hope this isn't just a 1 week thing and we actually get some momentum put behind the Dark Order. I mean, the people that have left, it sounds like, we're largely contractual issues and maybe them not making enough, not getting the offers that they want. But with this group of 6, it sounds like they're the ones that are going to be sticking around. And I don't see why you wouldn't at least, make an attempt at giving a bigger storyline for them, because they are a very beloved group with a lot. Like Silver and Reynolds, I think should be making a very legitimate chase for the tag team championships. I think Evil Uno as a singles wrestler, I'd love to see a whole lot more of, being, and Anna Jay, of course, I think, like these are all people that I would say to some extent are pretty over, and as a group that they are very much over. So I would say like it's been a bit of a question, questionable to me why they've been so underutilized beyond, the two that have left.
Jim Ross came out for the second hour, and that began with Penta, Oscuro, and Rush. And Rush tries to rip at the mask early on, but Penta stops him, hits a sling blade, and then a tope con hero. And the way it was shot, man, it looked like this guy was not going to clear the rope, but hit it just fine. But it was just the way he like got up. It was like, man, is he going to clear the rope? But he did, in fact, do it. Then we had Alex Abrahantes and Jose just do the cat fight spot and spears them, and then they have to be separated by Andrade and Phoenix. Rush hit this very nice looking snap power slam, and Penta comes back with a backstabber. They go back and forth. Both men are down after a leaping knee strike from Rush. Rush lands the missile drop kick, and then a senton off the top for a 2 count, sets up for the bull's horns when Penta stops him with a rolling cutter. Fear Factor is hit, but Andrade puts Rush's boot onto the rope, and this leads to Bryce Remsburg being distracted, and with his back turned, Rush hits a low blow on Penta, and then for good measure rips his mask off and cradles him as Bryce turns around, counts 3 in 11 minutes and 11 seconds, and Phoenix uses his jacket to cover up Penta's face.
Yeah, I mean, these masks, I don't know if he needs to improve like the string on them or what. I mean, they're becoming a real liability here. Maybe like double Velcro,
Yeah, or have the backup mask underneath.
Ooh, 2 masks. Okay. Yeah. Or maybe just paint your face like, like Liger. What Liger did. Paint your face underneath the mask.
That'll teach him. I'll have to bring out like a paint remover to try and just rub the paint off to embarrass you.
That's it. A very good, very physical match. This features some of the hardest chops that I think you'll see this week. I don't know if the crowd engagement was as strong as it should have been here. And I feel like, again, going back to maybe what we were talking about with Brody King on this show, I think they've done a relatively poor job of introducing the AEW audience to Rush. Again, you have that Ring of Honor library. You even have a bit of that New Japan library to rely on, I'm sure, if you wanted to like show him with Tetsuya Naito or something. Just a bit to show the audience how big of a deal he is. Like they mentioned on commentary that he's a 2-time Ring of Honor champion, and I don't know if anybody would have realized that prior to this match. Again, he just comes across much like Brody Lee. He comes across as somebody else's lackey here in Andrade, and I just don't know.
Brody King.
I'm sorry, Brody King. Man,
a lot of Brodys on this show.
Yeah, that's going to be a difficult one, but yeah, I just think that they could have done a better job introducing Rush to make him feel like a bigger deal.
Yeah, I like the match. I didn't know how this one was going to gel, but I thought they did a nice job. I thought Rush, for his first singles outing in AEW, it was a nice match to start things off because we just had him briefly in the Battle Royal, and that was technically his AEW debut on Friday. It's officially announced that Samoa Joe will defend the television title against Jay Lethal on July 23rd at Death Before Dishonor. Lethal reacts with Dutt and Satnam Singh. Lethal calls him a tough champion. I'm not taking you lightly, but we are taking your championship. And then Singh just peers in looking like a giant. New champion. And that's it.
Yeah, we're finally getting the match after weeks and weeks and weeks of build to this Jay Lethal Samoa Joe thing from the last show. I feel like I would have enjoyed this feud a whole lot more if it was just Jay Lethal and Samoa Joe. All the Satnam Singh, like Sanjay Dutt stuff feels really kind of forced in with no real storyline reason about why they're there, other than like, I guess Sanjay being Jay Lethal's friend.
I like Dutt. I think he's like a nice part of this thing.
I think he's fine, but I just think like he's hamming it up so much as like evil, like evil heel manager. It takes me out of like what could be a very real feeling feud between like all the history between, I mean, the three of them. Like he feels too much like he's just like a comic book villain.
I think that's what they want with Satnam Singh. I don't know if that necessarily.
But for Ring of Honor and for Samoa Joe, like I think Ring of Honor should be the like your product that feels even more sports like than AEW does.
Tony Nese and Mark Sterling catch up with the best friends. They need one more name. So apparently Swerve is not all that popular. They got enough names signed on this thing. They just need one more.
Guess so.
Orange Cassidy explains, I don't read anything without my lawyer. So Danhausen walks in, and Sterling proposes that Orange Cassidy face Tony Nese on Rampage, and if Tony Nese wins, you have to sign the petition. It's like, what the hell is this? This is like something that I feel would be, you would be making fun of, this kind of a setup for a match. This just felt
100%.
This angle felt so silly and so out of place.
So speaking about comic book characters, I think a lot of like the Mark Sterling character, as entertaining as he is, but he's very much a comic book like slapsticky type of gimmick, you know, like a lawyer who somehow operates in some sort of weird legal system that is not at all believable. And that might kind of take away some of your immersion too in what is supposed to be a sports like product.
If you were trying to get someone fired, okay, and you had to get 100 signatures, and in one night you got 99 of them.
Yeah.
Would you enter into a physical fight for that one extra signature? Or would you just, you know what? I'm going to head by catering one more time and just do a quick roundup and see if I missed anyone.
I think I would just forge a signature at that point.
This petition, this is a weird one.
It's stupid. Yeah.
I know it was it was 2 brief backstage segments, but more time than was needed to set this thing up for Friday.
Is Hookhausen done, by the way?
They weren't aligned here. It was just Danhausen on his own. Perhaps.
Yeah, they haven't been aligned for the past week. So Interesting.
The Acclaimed and the Gun Club versus Bear Country, Leon Ruffin, and Fuego del Sol. So I thought this was actually a really smart spot where Max Caster comes out, and we're at the point now where the fans in the city, they want to hear this guy rap about their city or insult them or whatever, but it's a part of the show, and they were deprived of it because as soon as he comes out to start, Austin Gunn rips the microphone away, and this crowd was livid that they were not getting the rap. I thought it was a really smart idea.
Totally. Absolutely worked. You know, I mean, the Acclaimed really are baby faces at this point. And the crown jewel of their act is this, and they took it away.
So despite Austin Gunn stealing the microphone, Max makes a save, saving Austin, who nearly gets pinned. Bowens comes in, doing the famouser onto Bear Boulder, and Max hits the mic drop, but Austin tags himself in, and he steals the pin in 2 minutes and 29 seconds. Not much for the match, but afterward, the Acclaimed starts arguing with Austin and Colton, and they all start to fight when Billy comes in and is just yelling, "Cut it out," to his kids. Like he's scolding them when they were like adolescents. And then he turns around and he nails Bowens with the clothesline. And Bowens holds up the scissors and Billy hits him with the famouser. And Austin gets onto the floor and scissors the limp hand of Anthony Bowens. So the Gun Club has separated themselves from the Acclaimed.
No more scissoring. It's over.
No, cut it out.
I suppose you can look at this as the official face turn for the Acclaimed. And I think at this point we can assess whether or not the overall angle, at least, leading to the turn, has been successful. And I would say it's been very successful for both of these teams. You helped, create, I think, a really hot babyface team in the Acclaimed right now. And you absolutely boosted the heel stock of these ass boys who, have, I think, over-delivered, in my opinion, when it comes to both in-ring and also like as characters. So this suddenly feels like a pretty hot feud. I love the little ending visual of Bowens trying to throw up the scissors to daddy ass and getting attacked for it. It was very sad, bittersweet, but I think both teams are going on to better things.
Yeah. Kind of quick the way they went through this, like last week where he's shoving down his kids. This week it's the turn. It just felt like, okay, we're going to skip all the middle stuff and just get to the feud that this was always designed to be.
I think maybe last week was just supposed to be like a swerve, like a bit of a misdirect. Where do you think this match takes place?
Oh, this feels like TV.
Yeah, I think so too.
Probably different combinations. Is Billy going to get a match with Bowens? Is that the big match?
That's the pay-per-view match.
Maybe.
Billy and Bowens.
Maybe
he is the unstoppable force. He is like the the difference maker. He's the guy who took down the New Japan Dojo.
That's it. We hear from Miro, who addresses Malachi Black. They are different types of men. Black connects the weak. He disposes of them. And the Redeemer is coming for the House of Black, and he is enraged. But seemed okay from the Black Mist. I mean, not going to have any paralysis, no blinding issues. He seems to, he had a long shower, got all that gunk out of his face, and now he's pissed.
I think that's the key. You probably only have like 5 minutes or 10 minutes to wash that stuff out of your eye.
Julia Hart went out for drinks afterwards, and it's like, hey, this is going to be months of this, and get used to an eye patch.
That's it. That's
not Miro. Miro knows. He probably flushed his eyes out.
Yeah. So Miro versus Malachi Black in the meantime. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I'm down for that.
Thunder Rosa and Tony Storm. Thunderstorm against Nyla Rose and Marina Shafir. There was some nice grappling at the beginning between Thunder Rosa and Shafir. Thunder Rosa's got the front chancery, and they have Shafir in the corner. And then there is this moment where Thunder Rosa just swats her. And you see Thunder Rosa turn her head, and Marina just screams, "Don't apologize!" And she fires back. I was like, what is this?
Who apologized? Did Thunder Rosa apologize?
Thunder Rosa must have apologized for really laying it in on the chop, and Marina just screams, "Don't apologize!" So, I mean, the veil, can we just have a pro wrestling match?
Maybe she's referring to the apology that they had backstage where they broke bread after all that stuff, with the...
Oh, okay. This was a retroactive "don't apologize," not in the moment "don't apologize." Okay.
Maybe. Yeah, okay. I don't know. I mean, when it comes to pro wrestling, I suppose there's an element of just really getting into character, or I don't know.
Or not.
Or not getting into character in this case. We'll see if this makes it to Potchamania, I suppose.
Marina starts to fight back, and then Storm runs the ropes, and Nyla Rose has an umbrella and nails her with an umbrella. So we got an umbrella on Raw and Dynamite this week.
I mean, the umbrellas are the new Singapore cane.
I'll take these over the kendo sticks. If we're going to change them around, get much more out of the umbrella.
Depends on the quality of umbrella, I would say. I would take a dollar store umbrella any day. Yeah.
Storm gets dragged into the heel corner, so they had the advantage. Thunder Rosa then... she runs the ropes, and it was interesting. Thunder Rosa runs the ropes, and you see these arms reach from the floor, and it's Shafir. And I don't know if she was supposed to trip her, but then Thunder Rosa 2 more times, she built up to running the ropes, and they never went back to this trip spot. So I don't know if they just missed it or it was never supposed to happen, but it was odd. And Storm comes in, hits her big hip attack on Shafir, and then we get an assisted Fire Thunder driver as Storm comes off the turnbuckle, and Thunder Rosa pins Shafir, and they position the two as this is their first match together. The idea that this is a pairing, and it makes you wonder with Serena Deeb and Mercedes Martinez if they are slowly introducing women's tag teams.
That's the way it's been looking like to me.
They got a name even.
Oh yeah, it's certainly, yeah. And it also looks like Nyla Rose and Marina Shafir, it continues to be a tag team. Whatever the baddies have going on, whatever combination that they've got going on, I'm sure will be a tag team.
The odd couple, Jade and Layla Gray. Can they get along?
That too, yeah. Can any other pairings? I mean, Anna Jay and Ty Conti is not a thing anymore.
You can make plenty of teams. It just seems with those two specific ones, they are making a concerted effort right now.
And let me just say, we could have a division without necessarily having championships. I think
I don't believe you. I don't believe you. Every single division needs to be represented with belts. Every tournament needs a belt.
Yeah. We need a street fight belt. We need a blood and guts championship. We need a battle royal championship, of course. Yeah, everything deserves a championship. I think tag teams are obviously just great ways to be able to tell story. Any sort of faction, war is a good way to continue to tell story, to spring off of singles matches. But can this division sustain a tag team title? Maybe at this point, I certainly feel like, so you have the TBS, you have the women's championship,
ROH women's championship.
Well, yeah. Okay. Then maybe I kind of take it back. I don't know if it necessarily needs it, but listen, if they can tell, good stories, then I'm for it. I'm at least for the idea of more tag team matches and more established, frequent tag teams in the women's division.
I think this company is already way too many titles. So I'm not going to get bent out of shape over more because it's already an issue and it's not going back. They're not reducing any of their titles. So we're at this point. So it's like, if I told you, Wai, that you're $10,000 in debt, and then the next day I tell you it's actually $12,000. It's like, are you getting as mad as when you found out you were $10,000 in debt? Once I tell you there's another two, it's like 12. Like at that point, make it 15. Like at that point, where we are.
It's a wonderful analogy for championship titles that you just came up there.
There's way too many. Is there anyone out there that is outside of AEW that is going to make that argument that, yeah, this is the perfect amount of titles that we have when we consider ROH, when we consider that like New Japan titles, AAA titles?
So again, the idea is, I mean, you're not hopefully going to see any sort of New Japan representation other than FTR anytime soon for their titles. Same with Ring of Honor, but let me just say, I might be more for the idea of a tag team women's championship than I am for a trios championship, which to me, I don't know if you need belts to establish this is the best trios. Like, I think a tournament would be great once a year, but like belts to carry around all the time, I'm not necessarily for that. How much more story could you be telling?
How about jackets?
Okay. Jackets. Yeah, sure. Berets, maybe?
Yeah, like starter jackets. Okay, let's go retro. And each team can color code their own jackets, the three of them.
Starter jackets. Okay.
Yeah, with the little pouch at the front.
How about just like a, really nice fanny packs.
Okay, Jake Hager is your world champion.
Yeah, sure.
Tony Schiavone is with the Baddies, and Jade asks Stokely Hathaway what the hell was last week, and he calls Layla Gray an interim baddie while Red Velvet's gone, an interim baddie, and tells Jade to trust the process, and Stokely tries to put his arm around Layla, who just shoves it off, and Jade warns Stokely, it's your ass if this doesn't work.
Mm-hmm. What is the process? How do you become from an interim to a full-on baddie?
I guess if Red Velvet doesn't come back, then you get elevated to full-time status.
Okay.
Maybe you got to win a belt in this time period. That would ensure that they got to keep you around. If you're a champion, you got a belt. Then Excalibur, he just gulped down some water because Excalibur, we got a show on Friday. We've got a show next Wednesday. We've got this new ROH pay-per-view, and don't forget the main event. So he plugged for Rampage. Eddie Kingston against Konosuke Takeshita. Jonathan Gresham and Lee Moriarty against the Gates of Agony. What a name. The Gates of Agony.
I mean, it's along the lines of the Legion of Doom, isn't it? Or the Authors of Pain. It's
like they're not agony. They don't represent agony. They're like the barrier before you enter agony. Okay, that like is Brian Cage the agony behind the gates? Like, I mean, we're just keeping you from agony. You have to get through us before you're going to be agonized.
The Gates of Agony. So before you feel pain, this is sort of like the calm. They're like the soft, gentle cushion. They're the anesthesia, basically, before you feel pain.
They're the last obstacle.
Okay.
Before agony sets in.
I mean, that sounds nice to me. I'm glad they're there.
Okay. Mercedes Martinez and Serena Deeb will be in action, and Orange Cassidy versus Tony Nese with, I kid you not, a signature at stake.
Did they actually like put that on the graphic?
I don't think so.
Okay. Thank goodness.
But that was the stipulation. If Orange Cassidy loses, he has to sign his signature on this bullshit petition. And in theory, a guy gets fired if Cassidy loses. They're the one last signature. So what does that mean? What does this all mean?
Well, then
I hated this thing.
They can present Tony Khan with a nice round number on their signature form.
And then he'll say, bullshit. He's got a 3-year contract.
Well, that tends to be how petitions typically go.
Okay. Fyter Fest next week, night 1. Presumably night 2 will be Rampage. So Wednesday's got Claudio Castagnoli against Jake Hager, and the Young Bucks, Swerve in Our Glory, and Hobbs and Starks, which should be a phenomenal match with those three. So 2 match announcements for next Wednesday. And then Death Before Dishonor. Samoa Joe against Jay Lethal. They confirm Wheeler Yuta against Daniel Garcia for the Pure Championship. And Schiavone interviews Daniel Garcia. He went an hour with Yuta last week, 46 minutes, and detected zero fear and calls him the best. You will call me the best at Death Before Dishonor. And then if that's not enough, FTR do a promo listing off the tag titles they hold. It's a lot. lot of titles, and no match has taken more out of them than when they won these ROH titles at Supercard of Honor, but some still don't believe they're the best. And Dax says that's what's great about pro wrestling. You can believe whatever you want, but you can also be wrong, and challenges the Briscoes to a rematch at Death Before Dishonor. If you want to be a king, you've got to kill a king, and we aren't dead yet.
Yeah, some big announcements, I would say, for Death Before Dishonor, and their matchmaking for this show is of particular interest, just for us to be able to see how much AEW integration of, like, you know, full on AEW names will be there. I love the match that they're making for the Pure Championship between Wheeler Yuta and Daniel Garcia. It is, I think, the perfect type of match to make for a Pure Championship match. They had a tremendously well-reviewed match on the Indies last year in August, with many talking about it being a match of the year candidate. I believe like a 60-minute draw or something like that, right? So this time they're going to bring it to a bigger stage, and with the both of them, I think, having been way more accomplished now and way more popular now than they were back then. So a continuation of the BCC versus, you know, Jericho Appreciation Society feud with the two kind of young prospects of the group is a perfect thing to put on this show that feels like it's connected enough to AEW, while at the same time, you know, giving like a bit of an ROH particular spotlight for Wheeler Yuta and this Pure Rules rule set. So I'm looking forward to that a whole lot. And running back FTR versus the Briscoes, another match that took place this year that many people, I'm sure, are looking at as a front runner for their match of the year.
I think that should headline the show, to be honest. I think that's much bigger match than Joe and Lethal. I think that should headline the show.
Well, what about it? Would probably be bigger than anything involving Gresham, unless we're talking about Bryan Danielson versus Jonathan Gresham. I mean, and that to me will be the most interesting one. Who do you put against Jonathan Gresham? If it's Danielson going for the ROH Championship, I think that trumps everything. If it's what about Cesaro? Do you can
I mean, that's where I was leaning after it was brought up that, you know, you've never been a world champion. Like, that was brought up in the Hager promo, and I could certainly, like, injury aside, like, even if Danielson was healthy, I don't know if maybe they would feel like putting him on top of this ROH show to ensure that this pay-per-view does very well. Certainly Danielson would be that person you would task with it. But I would say Claudio at the very least feels like he is someone to be put in that role. That's what I took from the promo earlier in the night with Jake Hager.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah. But, you know, as far as like a card that is certainly catering towards the hardcores and the people who watch the first Supercard of Honor, like I think it's a show that's looking pretty good so far.
And it's going to have a lot more AEW television promotion behind it than Supercard did. And Supercard, by ROH standards, did very well. This is one where I think people are going to be looking at a much higher ceiling of what this can do, because like, this was a lot of promotion they got on tonight's television, and I think that'll be reflected in the next couple of weeks. Yeah,
I'm very curious to know, like, what projections are, what your prediction might be, John, you know, in the weeks leading up to this, whether or not, like, what's the ballpark would you say would be a success for something like this?
I not knowing Gresham's opponent, that's a big indicator. I think that does matter. But off these three matches, okay, if we were going off of this, you know, I'm looking at, you know, 45 to 60. I would say like
that's
that would seriously be
huge cry from, you know, the standard of an AEW pay-per-view. So yeah, it's a continued question of, like, with these
three matches, like we're talking about, like, Supercard of Honor doing, you know, probably in the neighborhood of, well, we don't know the number, but, you know, way less than like 60,000 buys.
And so, you know, the continued question is, if you strictly change the letters from ROH to AEW and put on that same card, how much more would you be doing? But the argument is that, I mean, this is Tony Khan trying to build up another property, you know, sacrificing potentially a few more buys for one show in order to try to get another brand off the ground so that he can eventually make comparable money to what he's getting with AEW. It's an interesting experiment that we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, the ROH experiment, we are not going to be able to properly judge for months. And it's going to be based on, you know, a theoretical television deal, and this pay-per-view will be very interesting. Like, if this one blows away expectations, that tells you something about the value of what this brand means, or more importantly, what the value of promotion on AEW television means for this show. But I certainly believe, like, you put those AEW letters, like, you're guaranteed doing six figures and above on pay-per-view. It's more of a risk, but we also have to look at how the card shapes up and what these next couple of weeks entails in terms of the build. And the main event, Jon Moxley, Brody King for the Interim Championship. William Regal is on commentary, and King runs at Moxley, missing and going into the steps. Moxley goes after the knee after a single leg, and after the break, King is destroying him and hits him with this chop, and Moxley just flops against the bottom rope, and his feet are just dangling on the rope as the camera on the floor just shoots him like between his legs, looking dead. King, after Moxley comes back, eats elbows, but then King misses a cannonball in the corner. Moxley is fighting for the bulldog choke and starts landing stomps. King hits a pile driver, and Moxley then gets to the back, applies the rear naked choke. It's King that applies the rear naked choke and sits on the turnbuckle and does the same spot he used to eliminate Darby, where he's lifting up Moxley and then just drops him. This time he hits the cannonball, only gets a 2 count. Taz, throughout this whole match, is warning us that they will stay with this if it goes past the hour, and keeps telling you this. One of these days they're going to do that, and you're going to have just outrage from this audience that it's going to be cut off or something, that they're not expecting it to go past the top of the hour.
Did they have an overrun today?
No, I think they were done right at 10.
Oh, okay, because like when I'm watching on TSN, it's somewhat delayed, so I can never really tell. So.
Moxley then hits a DDT, elbows, King roars, and then Moxley gets the rear naked choke. King falls backwards to break it, but the choke is reapplied, and Moxley turns it into the bulldog choke, and Brody King passes out at 13-17.
Really strong match. This was a big match for Brody King, of course, and I thought he absolutely delivered on the level of somebody that you would expect to be at the very highest, level when it comes to I suppose notoriety in the independent scene, and I thought delivered a really strong match here with Jon Moxley. It was very physical and very entertaining. I just wish they maybe built up Brody King a little bit more prior to the match.
Yeah, I think that affected the main event. It was a nice match, but I never sensed that this audience was on the verge of seeing a title change or believing in this guy as a challenger. It was a nice match, and I think that that is going to be expected when you for an AEW main event. Overall on the show, I did not sense that one big blowaway match on the show. Nothing that was terrible other than the petition angle. But yeah, this felt like a much more subdued episode of Dynamite that sort of just came and went. I honestly believe the most impactful thing on the show was what they did with Wardlow. I thought that was very strong stuff off the top. And you could argue if the crowd was ever as loud as they were for the ending of that.
I think you could argue that the Christian promo elicited a lot of reaction, and maybe people talking afterwards. But whether or not that's a positive or negative reaction from your viewing experience, again, depends on the viewer. But yeah, biggest news coming out of the show was certainly probably Wardlow winning his first championship. I thought it was, as Dynamites usually are, I think it was an entertaining show, but at this point, because the quality is so high, we're just kind of talking about whether or not it's up to one of the best Dynamites of the year sort of standard that I think we're starting to get used to.
Yeah, it was I thought it was an easy show to get through. Certainly, I didn't think any of it dragged, but it's also they have set the bar very high for their shows, where you can say people are spoiled, but it's become the regular now of looking for that 4-star match that you're going to get on Dynamite every week. And when you set the standard, that's going to be the expectation too, and that is a negative long term of of expecting that on a weekly basis.
And perhaps we are feeling the effects of the lack of star power.
Yes,
that's starting to appear on the show without a CM Punk, without a Bryan Danielson, without who else has been missing? MJF.
Yeah,
not on the show.
I mean, he was represented on the show, but you didn't have Jericho there tonight. But I guess he was kind of on the show. So yeah, I think that's another part too. It's you had all this hype for the pay-per-view and then Blood and Guts, and now it's sort of what's next, where are all these programs going to be that you start building. You are building for a smaller pay-per-view in a couple of weeks with Ring of Honor, and you're absent many of your key stars.
You're building for a Ring of Honor pay-per-view without any of the acts, top acts, actually having a presence on the show. other than like backstage interviews. But we don't see Joe. We don't see Lethal in a match. We don't see FTR in a match on this card. On tonight's Dynamite at least, and Yuta and Garcia was also kept to a promo. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this ROH pay-per-view does.
Yeah. It was also interesting that in Impact, like they just wrote off the Briscoes with this big injury angle to get them off of Against All Odds last Friday. And then here they're set up for like this pay-per-view match. So you kind of have they're beaten down and injured on one promotion, and here they are set up for a pay-per-view match in the other company.
Is it the Forbidden Door anymore, or is it just more I don't know.
I mean, Frankie Kazarian was on that show last week, so
right.
I mean, we still get some back and forth. All right, let's go to the forum and see what you had to say. Maybe you had many other observations of the show. We start off with Steve from Virginia Beach. When the Gun Club won their match, the entire crowd facing the hard camera went blank. No one cheered, booed, moved, or made any noise whatsoever. It was quite odd and fascinating. In my 36 years of being a wrestling fan, I can honestly say I've never seen that before. Also, does Kip Sabian really get paid to sit in the front row with a box on his head every week?
Does he get paid? I'm not sure what sort of deal he's on. I mean, I would assume that he's traveling to the show every single week for some, purpose, financially.
Maybe this is Tony Khan's big sting in the rafters angle. He's got something big planned.
Well, or do we even know that it's Kip Sabian every single week? Could they just not hire a PA in the back to like put the box on their head pretending to be Kip Sabian?
No, you got to fly this guy all over the country to do this.
Yeah. I just, at this point, like he's revealed it to everybody. Like we all know who it is. He like, I believe his like Twitter itself, like it's no secret who it is. So I don't know how big of a, on TV it'll still be, but we kind of talked about this on Friday. I don't know how many people are going to care once it's like revealed to be Kip Sabian, underneath the box. I mean, it depends on, I don't know what sort of because they're not calling attention to it. And then anyway.
No, it's not focused. You could be watching this every week and maybe you notice it, and odds are it's just there. It's like maybe, oh yeah, the box. Yeah. You wouldn't even know it from just a fan that travels to all these shows.
It's interesting. It's more than I could say for Kip Sabian's last gimmick. So
okay.
Yeah. Okay, we got a Johnny Sanchez who says, might be in the minority, but I found this episode to be a bit lackluster. I was really looking forward to the Mox versus Brody match, but it just didn't do anything for me. I'm glad Wardlow won the TNT title. No rematch. Please just have Wardlow do weekly challenges. I'm glad they're building up the ROH pay-per-view. Honestly, I don't have much to talk about from this Dynamite. Question: with all the changes with the Warner Brothers and Discovery merger, do you think there might have been a change in hiring the Briscoes could be a thing? Yeah, that was also, of course, the other really interesting aspect of it all. Of course, the Briscoes were already announced for Supercard of Honor prior to Tony Khan taking over, but this is the first Tony Khan-led show where he is hiring the Briscoes. Does this indicate anything to you about their future with the promotion or AEW?
I mean, it's obviously something that they're moving forward with, or else they wouldn't be booked for this show. I guess the next question would be if they show up on TBS or TNT, that would certainly signal that it's no longer an issue, and that they would be an asset for AEW as well beyond this pay-per-view.
Yeah, they could be a team that, I mean, I could certainly see, much like Gresham, being kept on the ROH brand just because of their legacy attached to the product. It's a continued test to see, I think, where the public is at when it comes to the Briscoes. They received a hell of a reaction, at Supercard of Honor throughout WrestleMania weekend as well. So at least from the live reactions that we can tell, it seems like this is an audience that is very much ready to have the Briscoes back. There are still going to be detractors, and I think for very valid reasons. So again, this is probably one of their bigger, on-screen presences that's about to come up, and it'll be another chance to really kind of gauge where the public's at.
Yeah, I don't think the audience is going to be very negative to them at all. I mean, no wrestling crowds are, and I think that it's more so just a decision from above if they have the go-ahead, and it'll be noteworthy whether they show up on AEW programming to build this pay-per-view up, and also noteworthy if they don't. I guess you can just take that for what it is.
Let me interrupt the forum feedback because I forgot we have a few super chats here to get to. Apologies, guys. We first go to Hansi, who sent $7. Thank you for the support as always, Hansi. He says, I hope as well TNT Open challenges. Wardlow also has blood feuds, which this title needs. Hope everything with John works out. Keep your head up.
It says, ooh, keep
your head. Ooh.
I will.
Yeah.
Blood feud with Wardlow. Well, you need the opponent first. So
yeah. I think you like, because the formula works so well with Wardlow, like he's essentially Goldberg, a modern day Goldberg. I think you just continue to rack up those numbers, continue to get him really hot. Eventually he runs into an obstacle that's a bit tougher to get by than most. And it's got to be the right opponent because, like, you know, that same magic that he found with MJF isn't going to be easy to find. So who is that guy? Who is it? We get a Kevin Anderson who sends $2. Thank you for the support, Kevin. He says, great interview with the Shockmaster yesterday.
Thank you, Kevin.
Shockmaster, referring to, of course, Tom Lawler.
Yes.
Who made a famous entrance, one of my all-time favorite memories from covering a UFC. Okay, let's continue here, John.
Bruce writes, another fun Dynamite aided by a very hot crowd. No must-see matches, but certainly nothing bad. It's a minor point, but Shafir looked a lot more fluid and comfortable in a tag context. Yeah, I thought like the tag overall, apologies aside, I think like it was, it worked better than the one-on-one match Thunder Rosa and Shafir had a few weeks back.
Yeah, I'm in the minority that actually enjoyed that one-on-one match as well. You know, there's just something about, I think, like Shafir's in-ring style that stands her apart from everybody else and looks very much more legitimate than many others, and maybe too legitimate in that instance.
He says that Death Before Dishonor is starting to shape up quite nicely and looks like it should be able to deliver some classic ROH flavor, even with a number of names on the card not traditionally associated with the brand. That would not be dictating how this card is booked for me, of like just making sure it's people that were still on the ROH brand. I think you want to use your bloated roster to up that star power. Like having a Daniel Garcia and a Wheeler Yuta, that's a plus for the show.
Certainly, absolutely. I think it is important to keep some of, you know, what made ROH like identifiable, and that's not to say you keep everybody, but you keep the people that I think the audience remembers well from the brand, including Jonathan Gresham, including the Briscoes, and including Samoa Joe. You know, we're talking about not just modern day ROH, but people that I think have a legacy attached to the brand, and that could include Bryan Danielson as well.
Yeah, that's kind of Bruce's question here in terms of just the build and using past talents and doing it on AEW television. I would want to structure this pay-per-view that has the most like a mass appeal to it. It's great if you have some of those talents that have the ties to ROH's history, so it makes sense to have them on the card. But I would not be making that a hard and fast rule that. You know, it's an audience that wants great wrestling for 3 hours that you're hoping will spend another X amount of dollars after they've just spent money on Double or Nothing and Forbidden Door, and now you're asking them for a third month in a row to spend money on. So you have to give them an incredible wrestling card and hopefully some fresh matches and get away with promoting it as much as you can on your own television, which it seems there are no hangups on and no restrictions.
Do you sense, like, for this particular type of audience that AEW amasses, that there is that same sort of like maybe concern about paying every single month? Because I would argue that like this is the type of audience that is willing to pay once a month for a quality show. Again, not necessarily a WWE card every single month, but like this is the same type of audience that like is willing to, like, you know, maybe buy an independent wrestling show, a GCW show, you know. If the card is interesting to them, I feel like they're, you know, like I just wonder if there'd be that same exhaustion for like once a month being too much.
I think that it's for many fans that buying a pay-per-view every month, it's something. I would look at the people that are buying even one GCW every month. It's a very small number. You're trying to attract this to a much larger audience. And let's be honest, like if you are someone that say you buy AEW's pay-per-views 4 times a year, you've got a couple streaming services, like that's kind of that satisfies you. The network, they're not asking you to buy a WWE show every 4 weeks. It's kind of one set fee. It is a monthly, it's whatever your cost is for a streaming service. But, this is not going to be a cheap pay-per-view either. Like it's probably going to, be 40, $50, something like that. I don't like, if it's a great card, I don't see the price being an issue, but you are at the same time coming off, like, this is almost becoming monthly now for AEW pay-per-views or adjacent pay-per-views.
I'm next. We go to Brian from New Jersey, who says, pretty fun show tonight, as I usually feel about AEW at minimum, but it felt like a definite come down for Forbidden Door and Blood and Guts. The biggest highlight was the opener with Wardlow winning the TNT title. I could have done without the heavy jokes towards Jeff Hardy, but at least it sounded like the crowd reacted appropriately with heat towards Christian. I thought the main event was solid, but after the opener, it seemed the stuff worth being really excited for was what was being announced or teased for next week's show and Death Before Dishonor.
All right, and the last one is from Brian, who attended the show in Rochester. He said the show was a lot of fun. The entire Wardlow segment was the highlight of the night, and he came off as a star. Hopefully, he has a dominant reign as TNT champion and can help get that title back on track. The rest of the show was fine, with a nice main event, the Acclaimed face turn, and another fantastic Christian promo. Overall, it felt like an average episode of Dynamite, which I kind of expected after Forbidden Door and Blood and Guts. And he says that Kingston and Takeshita was easily the best match of the night, definitely worth checking out this Friday. So there you have it.
I am very excited for that. And that is the type of buzz that I think Rampage really benefits from, because of its taped format and people who have seen the show saying you don't want to miss this one because this thing was a banger. I'm really looking forward to it for, of course, all the Kings Road influence that I'm sure we'll get in the match itself.
Yeah, that's I'm sure that's going to be terrific.
Speaking of the Kings Road, just announced on our schedule, the latest edition of the Long and Winding Road taking place this Saturday. So Eric Marcotte will be the guest with WH Park this week, and they will be talking about a match that I will announce very shortly. If you give me 1 second here. It will not be Eddie Kingston versus Konosuke Takeshita, even though both of those men own the Long and Winding Road t-shirt. But they will instead be talking about Mitsuharu Misawa versus Toshiaki Kawada from October the 21st, 1992. So Eric Marcotte, besides being a very hard, one of the most knowledgeable and most well-watched MMA critics on the website, also quite the professional wrestling student himself. He knows a whole lot about everything. So I'm curious to get his thoughts on the show, on the match. I mean, you can find it on YouTube. So look for the match, October 21st, 1992, Mitsuharu Misawa versus Toshiaki Kawada.
All right. The same week that gave us your Toronto Blue Jays beating the Atlanta Braves in 6 games.
Goodness. Wow. What a week.
Oh, it's a great week. Great week for life. All right. So that's going to be dropping on Saturday. And then tomorrow, It's Wai Ting doubleheader day, as you will be live at 1 Eastern with Kate from Montreal on the Post Daily News Show, and then MCU later Thursday evening going through episode 5 of Miss Marvel. So you can check out all of that. I will tentatively be back Friday for the news show and Rewind to SmackDown. So all patrons at postwrestlingcafe.com will get Rewind to SmackDown and MCU later over the next 48 hours. So you can look forward to all of that great stuff.
And don't forget the G1 contest is now open at postwrestling.com/G1. It is free to enter, make your picks, and watch along the G1 with us on our Post Wrestling Cafe coverage.
Yes. After you sign a petition, go join the G1 contest. The deadline is Friday, July the 15th. Make all of your picks, and then you can have bragging rights at the end if you ascend to the top of the leaderboard. So all of that and more can be found at postwrestling.com and postwrestlingcafe.com. And that will wrap up